because if we can achieve aesthetically beautiful things and have them have this nerdy science attribute of being carbon negative, I'm just so hopeful about the future. Like what can't we make carbon negative then?
Hello, welcome to People, Planet, Profit, a podcast by EarthUP, where we aim to help businesses and people like you simplify sustainability. EarthUP CEO Stephen Bay will be joined by experts, innovators, and lifelong adventurers to break down some of today's biggest topics affecting the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. What does a sick building do to your health? Why should corporations be invested in biodiversity? How can I help create better working conditions and happier employees at my company? We'll cover these questions and so much more in a candid conversation about reshaping work culture into a landscape that prioritizes people and planet without sacrificing profit. Our next episode starts right now.
Hey, it's Stephen Bay, CEO of EarthUP. Today's episode features Lisa Conway, the VP of Sustainability for Interface. Interface is a global commercial flooring company and is a leader in sustainability and the healthy buildings movement. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you started working for Interface? I think it's been over a decade now.
I went to school for interior design, so not exactly the most normal path into sustainability. But freshly after school, I worked as a showroom manager for a commercial carpet company. And then a headhunter actually found me when I was working there and contacted me about a sales job on the streets of Philadelphia at Interface. It was then that shortly after I had started here that I read our founder Ray Anderson's book, Mid-Course Correction, really just trying to study up on what I had now signed up for. And I really kind of had my own spear in the chest moment about being able to not just be a, carpet slinger on the streets of Philadelphia, but also like really feel good about the product that I was selling. It was 14 years ago. This is my fourth and favorite role with the company, and have a small team, and I get to, work on reversing global warming every day. So it's a dream job.
That's pretty cool. You said spear in the chest, and I think this is something that Ray Anderson himself coined. What does that mean?
Yeah, that was when he convicted himself a plunderer. He read a book called Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken when he had started to get just a couple questions from customers. What are you doing for the environment? And his really awesome answer was, we're not breaking any laws. So as he started to really understand the impact that business has on the environment, that's when he had his kind of now famous spear in the chest moment and decided if a company like Interface could actually have zero negative impact on the environment, then anyone could, because we were a product company making primarily oil-derived products. And he never questioned really where it was coming from as long as enough was coming. It was then that he started our Mission Zero, which was our promise to eliminate any negative impact we have on the environment by the year 2020. We declared success on that. Our new mission is Climate Take Back. So running our business in a way that reverses global warming. And part of my job is to help activate that mission outside of Interface.
Carpets and rugs and flooring and all the things that you guys focus on, how does that have an impact on both the environment, but also the health of people inside these buildings?
Anytime you're making a product, you're extracting raw materials, you're manufacturing those materials, and that all can have a positive or negative impact on communities along the supply chain. Then it can also affect the indoor air quality and occupant health of people that are in spaces, whether it's in our houses like we are now, or office buildings, schools, hospitals. All of those spaces have stuff that can contribute to their health, both when they're in the building and then to other people's health that were along the supply chain of making those materials. So it's all kind of interconnected.
What is the importance of a healthy building, whether it's your house or if it's an office space?
Really making sure that people are healthy when they're indoors, when they're outdoors, and all of that all contributes to our health. Health from being impacted by outdoor air quality, for example, affects how we function and how productive we are when we arrive in a space. And then when we arrive in a space, there can be positive or negative impacts that help happen within that space while you're in it. I recently got an air quality monitor in my house, and I'm a sustainability person. I should have known how bad my gas stove was negatively impacting my health. And I didn't. And I think you don't know that, or even if you know it, that sensor telling me and watching the numbers drop and the air quality drop over time is something that I didn't realize how quickly it happened, how far down it could go in such a short amount of time. And then there's all kinds of things in our homes and commercial spaces, our offices, et cetera, that, for example, can off gas, like that smell. Some people get really addicted to that new car smell when they have a new car.
Yeah, every time I smell that, I always think of formaldehyde, right? And so, that's it's not something that you really want to be breathing. When you do get a contract for a big commercial building.
What factors do you look at when considering the health of a building and the materials used?
When we think about health and materials, we think about it through three lenses. The first is green chemistry. So that's kind of the obvious one. Do we not have toxic materials? Were people and the environment not hurt along the supply chain of making this product, et cetera, et cetera? Then circular economy is another one that people really don't think about in terms of health and materials. But if you're not creating a new material, then there's less opportunity for it to have a negative impact on people in the environment. So we include that as one of the lenses. And then the third lens that probably also isn't typical is embodied carbon. And the reason that we have that is that there are greenhouse gases being emitted and associated with making materials that make buildings. And according to the CDC, climate change is the greatest threat to human health of the 21st century. Really, full stop. And there's not a vaccine for it. So how a product contributes to climate change, to global warming, is tied to health of people, how they arrive at those spaces. So it's through those three lenses, and no material is perfect, but it's really managing the trade-offs between those three lenses as it pertains to people, in our view.
If you're on the other side and you're a building owner or you're having a tenant improvement done for your office space, what are some of the recommendations that you would make when it comes to both the health of the occupants, but also the environment and how to reduce your environmental impact?
The VOCs and indoor air quality ones are the easiest. So for us, it's a program called Green Label Plus or Green Guard Gold. They're the soft and kind of hard surface equivalents. But to just make sure you're keeping out the worst of the worst, there's also Floorcom is another logo. You should be looking for low VOC certifications. So a third party has verified that the VOCs that would off gas off of a product are low. And you can find that really easily. Beyond that, I think what happens to the product at the end of its life. So for example, we have three types of products in our portfolio. One of them stays down, 30 years. It's not cycled out as much as our carpet tile is. So our carpet tile lasts a really long time, but our customers' leases aren't necessarily long. So if they have a 5-year, 10-year lease, they're going to need a home for that more often than they will the rubber. Just thinking about what are you putting in, how long is it intended to stay there, and what are the end of life options? A lot of things are called recyclable nowadays. I think we all know that doesn't often happen. So making sure that there's some sort of third-party verification that product can be turned back into itself when it gets recycled. And then the third is transparency around carbon footprint. That is very, very available on the commercial side, less so on the residential side. But I think starting with commercial and using the transparency documentation that's been around for a long time, it's just that nobody reads it, is really key. So within those three lenses, that's kind of the three things to look for. The certification, what happens to it at the end of its life and how long does it stay down? And then how much embodied carbon is tied to this product. And
with end of life, you're kind of talking about design for deconstruction in a sense, right? Like when you are putting these things in, new flooring, walls, what's your 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan on how to reuse those?
Exactly. Are you a growing company where you can take the stuff that you've put into a new space and then 5 years later your lease is going to end? Are you probably going to abandon those products? Can you bring them with you to a bigger space and then just buy more of them? Just really thinking about what will happen to this, because too many companies just leave, and what happens during demolition happens during demolition. Thinking about things, I think, just in longer cycles is really necessary, both for the consumer and for commercial spaces.
I think 2020 was the year that we had more man-made mass on planet Earth than
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, more man-made mass than all the organic life on Earth, which is just crazy to think about.
We're the worst.
One of the worst things about it. And so as you're building, it's very easy to have a lot of stuff that you just throw away. And we haven't, as a human species, really thought about the impact that has. But as we're just building more and more and more, and cities are supposed to grow a lot in the next 20, 30 years, I agree. I think that's one of the main things that companies should really think about is what's our strategy?
And building reuse. There's always going to be renovation work to keep up with the times and to fix things that are in disrepair. But there's so much building space out there. We don't need to be building new buildings. Sometimes there's a case for it. There's kind of this movement starting that is really not just about appreciating. I mean, we all want to move into some like beautiful historic space. And, you barely have to do anything because you can just look at the exposed ceilings and walls, and that's amazing. But even some of the spaces that are not necessarily gorgeous to start with, we don't have to knock down concrete and steel to put up concrete and steel. We just really have to be creative by using what's already here. Because even if it makes sense from a 30 to 50 to 100 year building life cycle, we have 10 years to reverse global warming. So we need to make sure that we're really paying attention to what is actually being made within these 10 years. And if we keep building new buildings, we need to balance that a lot better.
And there's a lot of money to be made by using existing concrete, using existing steel. I'm still waiting for the company that comes along and is able to start mining landfills for all the resources that are inside these landfills. We just throw away so much stuff that can be reused. If a company is looking at making choices when it comes to their carpet, their walls, why interface? You mentioned the 3 ways that you are attacking sustainability and building health. Are those things other people are doing? What are you guys doing to kind of lead the way there?
One of the things that I actually appreciate about Interface is that we are a publicly traded company, but we are also a mission-driven company. So we're kind of one of these weird, like we're not a B Corp, we're not your typical publicly traded company. And I think that that's one of the really interesting things that Ray wanted to prove is there's a place for B Corps, there's a place for nonprofits, there's a place for everybody. But one of the things that he was really passionate about proving is that we can do it at a publicly traded company. I think that our customers feel through our people that we mean it and that it's comprehensive throughout our whole company and not just a product line. Most of what we do is it's ubiquitous. It's who we are.
And I recently learned that Interface actually has a line for residential use as well.
We do. Yeah.
Love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So Floor.com, FLOR.com is our consumer brand. And I always get a kick out of it because I'm one of those nerds who like watches HGTV and I'm like, look, there are carpet tiles. It's a catalog and internet business. You can do wall-to-wall carpet with it, but it's carpet in squares and it's mostly used in rug applications. And with them being squares, you can, pick one up if your dog has an accident on it and, hose it off and put it back down. They're all installed just with these little stickers on the back that adhere the tiles together. So super popular. In fact, a lot of our commercial clients use it too. For their fun spaces, there's just a lot more trendy styles within Floor than we have on just the traditional commercial side where the stuff really, it has to play for a long time, but we have a lot of fun with floor rugs, even on the commercial side.
As companies are expanding, are bringing people back to the office, what are some recommendations that you have when it comes to if people are having a hybrid approach? What are some recommendations you would make to help guide sustainability directors or anybody who's really concerned about the health of their occupants if they're working at home or coming to the office?
I think that one thing from COVID that will stay is the idea of flexibility. At Interface, we're super, super excited to get back to the office in whatever capacity that can be. And we have an almost brand new headquarters that once COVID hit, it's like, you can imagine how painful it is once you build this new space and there's nobody in it. But slowly people are coming back and that collaboration has really been missed, but the flexibility has been really appreciated. There are still people who want to be vaccinated and are not vaccinated. There are people who still have school situations, like my kids still aren't back full time, all kinds of situations. And I think that allowance of flexibility, that's awesome for wellness because you feel like you can take care of what you need to take care of both at work and at home And that can lead to less stress. I mean, that's, I don't need to figure out if I need to take time off work. I can go do my doctor's appointment and still get my work done before the end of the day. I think staying on top of how people are feeling is really important because it can change within 30 days. People are feeling a lot more confident now than they were, maybe too confident. So I think just really staying close to your employees and asking them what they need, that has been really crucial for us. And oftentimes what they need is not something that's expensive. It's a policy, it's some expertise, it's giving them permission to do something that they otherwise might not have thought they would be able to, quote unquote, get away with. Times are different. And we have to listen to everybody because everybody feels different and has a different situation at home. I think the tolerance for that has gone up.
Is there something that Interface is doing to address home health? If you're having employees working from home, is there something that you guys have been working on or around home health?
Most of it has really been around the flexibility that I mentioned, but then also working directly with your manager about what your specific situation is. If you're someone who's home with 5 kids, that's different than someone who's home and is single. And both of those can be very challenging. Everybody is so different. So staying in touch with our employees and really trying to do some engagement activities has been really crucial, especially around our mission. We did a bit of a pilot with EarthUP to take a small group of our people that were remote workers and just share with them, like, what are some things that you could be doing at home? And what are you excited about that you've done recently that you want to share? We don't have those platforms normally of like, what's a home project that's kind of tied to our mission that you would like to share? And it's such a great opportunity to get together with everyone. And then if there's a consortium of like, we all want Interface to help us with this, then that's something that we can bring back to the organization and see how we can figure out.
I think we're all ready for a little human interaction.
Yeah.
What's one thing about the healthy building movement that kind of gets you excited? I know that you guys have been, as a company, focused on this for a long period of time.
The constant learning is really interesting. And on the commercial side, while we've been reducing the carbon footprint of our products for 25 years, no one has cared. Like literally no one has cared. So we've had this reputation, but now people are actually starting to use that information for decision making. And that sparks competition and drives carbon footprint across our industry to be lower. So that's really exciting because there aren't often that many new topics. And this one, even though it's not new, it is new in that people are actually caring about it and wanting to take action on it. On the opposite side, as I was saying before, like I'm still learning. I'm learning more about my residential life than commercial. I'm so living in my commercial land that I don't even realize when I look around me how much impact I could have just in my own home, with my kids, things like that. I think that learning is all just exciting, and it's impossible to know everything, but I think that it's so important to remain open and hear other people's perspectives and the way that they think about things. It helps you be better at communicating and at prioritizing like what you're going to work on your team and your company, et cetera.
If you're a company and you're focusing on, driving that awareness that you just talked about having at home, right? Mm-hmm. The awareness around sustainability, carbon emissions, individual impact. Is that one mechanism that you think can really help support a company's sustainability department? If they're able to engage employees at home and drive that awareness, do you think there's ripple effects when it comes to the corporate mission?
I do. One of the reasons that Interface signed on to Amazon's climate pledge is that Amazon is a household name. We're a business-to-business company. Not everyone knows Interface. Not everyone has heard of us, et cetera. But when we're out there as the only voice talking about carbon in this case and why it matters and why healthy buildings matter and things like that, it helps so much to have a household name be talking about the same thing. Consumer lives are so personal to people. And if we can reach them both at home and at work, it makes it just like one comprehensive life. We have customers who are kind of the reverse example, but they're vegan, they bike to work, they do all this stuff, but they don't necessarily think about the carbon footprint of the materials they specify. And it's like, well, but you're doing all these things that would be so hard for me to do every day, but your larger impact is over here. So anything that helps people tie that together so that it's not just some initiative that they're hearing about at work or vice versa, just something that they're doing at home, I think really helps with employee engagement, with feeling like you have purpose and with, quite honestly, just understanding how things are connected.
And when you are going to companies and talking to them about making healthy building choices, do you guys talk about employee productivity or how it improves employee productivity or anything along those lines?
There's a great piece that we co-sponsored the research on, which is the global impact of biophilic design. It gives some really interesting statistics because I think we all kind of know that if we look at a tree, like if we have a view of a tree, that can calm us. But what the research also says is if you can't look directly at a tree, you can look at something that's designed of the same type of elements. And I don't just mean a painting of a tree. I just mean like, what do we like about that tree? The way that the light filters through the leaves, that we can almost picture how cool we would be in its shade. There's just so many of those experiential types of attributes that can really impact our well-being. Daylighting is one that's very well studied. There are direct metrics that are tied to increased productivity through things like biophilic design. And then, of course, indoor air quality, which is a little more scientific, like we were talking about before. But how all of these things play together is definitely something that we talk to customers about. It's been part of what the industry has been leading on. We just need to make sure that it's available to a lot more people. We don't want it to be healthy for the wealthy. We want that to be available to everyone. Hopefully everyone everywhere has access to all sorts of design that has well-being in mind.
And I agree, though, it's all the other companies that need to be able to access this. It's companies that have 40 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, but they might not have 50,000 people in an unlimited budget. So if you're a company and you're having employees work from home as well, you would make the assumption that there's going to be improved productivity if those home situations are also healthy.
Absolutely. It's all one big life. I mean, no matter where you're working from, your health and well-being needs to be first and foremost in order for you to be your best self, but then also for you to contribute to your company in the most holistic way.
So what do you see as some of the next steps companies should be taking when it comes to corporate sustainability?
The one that we talk to companies most about is about their scope 3 emissions. All of them tend to agree, that is their largest carbon impact, but it's also the most hairy. It's a lot of basing metrics on averages, and nobody feels great about basing things on averages. So exact data is really important to people. Actually, several organizations have agreed and are not just taking us up on it, but have actually identified it themselves that the building industry actually has a fair amount of transparency around the carbon footprint of all of the stuff that makes up the buildings. It is a place of scope 3 or supply chain emissions that companies can start with and make a real dent. Even if you're not getting to, what is the carbon footprint of every copier that we buy and every pen and all that kind of stuff, you can take a big chunk, which is the buildings that they either occupy or own, and start measuring and reducing the footprint of those.
There's more and more products available to help you do what you just said about the copier. Ecomedes, an incredible database of the emissions that come from chairs and desks. So as we push forward and as we have the support of all the investors and the consumers now, and so therefore the executive teams of these companies, I think the next decade you're just going to see more and more and more resources that are available across the entire business landscape.
Yeah. If every one person tries to take all of this on themselves, it's completely overwhelming and paralyzing. So figure out a way to have fun with it. Somebody is the task chair champion, and they learn like everything there is to know about task chairs from a sustainability perspective. Somebody else handles carpet, somebody else handles drywall, and on down the line, so that you can kind of divide it amongst your office or even amongst multiple friends across different companies, whatever it might be, but just like divide and conquer, and then over a beer, just talk about what you learned. Generally, it's going to be pretty static information for a fair amount of time. So it's not like you have to relearn it for every project, every buying decision that you have. We're talking about such heavy stuff all the time. I just really like to try and have fun with it, or we are all going to lose our minds.
Make it bite-sized and make it like a community exercise.
Exactly.
I really, really like that. The divide and conquer. Everything can get so complicated. It sounds so simple. When you dive into it, it's not simple at all.
It's not simple. It's not simple.
It's not simple.
But if you're even trying, you're doing great. Like once you're aware, it's hard to be unaware. So if you're even trying, just the more you learn, the better you'll get. And we all make mistakes, and we all have that like guilty purchase that we made, but then we're also in sustainability and we're like, oh my God, I hope no one ever finds out that I bought, X. But if you're trying, you're doing great.
I agree. Our head of
everybody gets a trophy.
Everybody gets our head of content says it's environmental progress, not perfection.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Like there's all these sayings that are just so true, because you're paralyzed if you try for perfection.
You talked about Mission Zero and how you guys accomplished that already. Mm-hmm. And there's some very, very compelling stats. I think it's 92% reduction of landfill, 89% reduction in water usage in factories, things like that. So now that you guys have accomplished that, is there anything that really gets you excited as you're focused on the future and as you kind of see the next 5, 10, 20 years of Interface's sustainability mission?
Mission Zero, the goal was zero. It's very clear that it's a reduction strategy. We just recently launched 3 carbon negative carpet tile styles. So that is going beyond zero and actually storing more carbon in the products than was emitted to make it, all the way from supply chain through manufacturing. We have a product that is often chosen based on aesthetics, plain and simple. Like if somebody likes our design, they'll buy it. But when you need to achieve that aesthetic quality and also have it be carbon negative, it's not something like it's insulation, it's behind the wall, nobody sees it. It doesn't matter what it looks like, or some roofing membrane, or, something like that. Not to say these things are easy, but you also need to achieve that aesthetic quality. And that, I think, bodes well for our industry. Because if we can achieve aesthetically beautiful things and have them have this nerdy science attribute of being carbon negative, I'm just so hopeful about the future. What can't we make carbon negative then? The building industry represents almost 40% of global carbon emissions. So how can we make it part of the solution instead of just measuring how much less of the problem it is? That gets me really excited.
Carbon negative flooring, and that is fascinating.
Yeah.
One of the things you hit on was the fact that you're not making any sacrifices to have this carbon negative flooring. You're not making sacrifices to have building products that can be reused. And I think we needed to get there as an industry when it comes to sustainability to really turn a corner and see things accelerate. Because if people are going to have to make sacrifices for sustainability, they're not going to do it.
Exactly. It needs to just be it's not costing you more, it's world changing, and we have the blue you like.
That's great. All right. Well, we've made it to the quick hitter section of this podcast. Basically, I'm going to ask you a quick question and get a quick response, and we'll just go right through it. So what gets you up in the morning?
Buildings is carbon sinks.
What's your beverage when you get up?
It's my guilty pleasure. It's a Starbucks venti decaf peppermint mocha, no whip.
Decaf.
I can't handle caffeine, but I love sugar. It's full of sugar.
What books would you recommend? 3
come to mind. One is Drawdown, because it's about solutions, not the problem. The second is The New Carbon Architecture. That's all about buildings as carbon sinks. The third is All We Can Save, which is an anthology, a collection of essays and poems and art by women on the forefront of the climate movement. It's incredible.
What's the one thing that you would recommend that they do in their daily routine that is more eco-friendly than they would think?
I was shocked at how easy it was to give up paper towels. I do still have a roll on hand for like dog vomit, but the rest of the stuff is all just like washcloths. It's so much better. And we just have a bin that we just throw them in, to add to the wash.
That is one of those things that you mentioned that you feel guilty about. Mm-hmm. We're good. We don't have Ziploc bags. We don't use foil. There's a bunch of things we're doing. Yeah. We crush paper towels. Paper towels way more than we should. And that's the one thing that my wife's like, don't even start with me.
Well, hey, tell her she can have them for dog vomit, but for everything else.
What is one technology outside of carbon sink flooring that you're really excited about over the next 5-10 years?
The one that is on an incredible clip of user adoption is the embodied carbon in construction calculator. That is a tool. It's called EC3. It's available at buildingtransparency.org. And you literally can't even pay for a better subscription. The whole thing is free for anyone that uses it. And that is just a collection of the transparency information around embodied carbon of all of these building materials, but you don't have to read the 17-page long EPD per product. Let's use the information that we have to make better decisions.
That's great. And that is something that even 2 or 3 years ago, most people didn't even think about, was the embodied carbon.
Exactly.
To see 12,000 users using that, it just shows the acceleration that's kind of happening on all fronts.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It's been a pleasure to have you. We really enjoyed working with you and your team during the prototype phase of EarthUP. And thank you for joining our podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And that's our episode. If you'd like more info about what Lisa is doing at Interface, visit interface.com. That's INTERFACE.com. EarthUP's new platform that simplifies sustainability for companies and communities is now live. To jump into the platform and start making change at home and work, go to app.earthup.eco. Become an early adopter and help us create an easier, more effective, and more fun platform for our community. Thank you so much for listening in and for your support. If you like our show, hit that subscribe button, tell a friend, and rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Your support helps us reach a wider audience, so thank you. To learn more about EarthUP and our journey to simplifying sustainability, visit earthup.eco and follow EarthUP on LinkedIn.